The latest attempt to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell has now begun in the 111th Congress. California Congresswoman Ellen Tauscher officially reintroduced the Military Enhancement Readiness Act to the House today. Senator Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts is expected to sponsor a similar bill in the Senate. Apparently, he is now looking for a Republican Senate co-sponsor for the bill. It also looks like President Obama is tentatively supporting the repeal efforts, with the White House saying today that he has, quote, begun consulting closely with Secretary Gates and Chairman Mullen so that this change is done in a sensible way that strengthens our armed forces and our national security. Now, when Congresswoman Tauscher first announced her bill on Monday, she was joined by a researcher named Dr. Nathaniel Frank. His assessment of the policy that got 12,000 service members kicked out over the last 15 years, he said that it is, quote, rooted in denial and deception and repression, created by military advisors who had no empirical data, who drew purely subjective conclusions when they created the policy. In other words, they just made it up. Seriously, that's how we got 15 years of a policy that ended more than 12,000 military careers. They just made it up? Joining us now is Dr. Nathaniel Frank, Senior Research Fellow at the Palm Center at UC Santa Barbara. He's the author of Unfriendly, How the Gay Ban Undermines the Military and Weakens America. Dr. Frank, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad to be here.
What did your research uncover about how Don't Ask, Don't Tell came to be, how the policy was created?
Well, there was a task force appointed in 1993 called the Military Working Group, and this was made up of a panel of admirals and generals. And it's not just my assessment. I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to them about the creation of this policy in 1993, and they said it was based on nothing. It was rooted in their own prejudices and fears. They even said they didn't know what sexual orientation meant. So they didn't look at empirical evidence, even though it was out there. And instead, they created this unit cohesion argument, which is the idea that openly gay service will somehow undermine unit cohesion, and that you have to force service members to lie in order to preserve unit cohesion, instead of the other way around, that forcing people to lie actually has its own impact on unit cohesion.
As I understand it, you spoke with a key advisor to the panel that created this policy, who admitted to you full stop that the unit cohesion argument was completely made up out of whole cloth, that it had no basis in any empirical evidence whatsoever.
Well, that it wasn't about empirical evidence. And let me be clear, these were the good guys. The ones I spoke to were the ones who were trying to do the right thing, but they didn't understand enough about what was going on, and that's one of the reasons they made it up. There was pressure from people who were just outright anti-gay, and what this really was about was morality and religion. So there was pressure from those people. The people that were kind enough to speak to me and speak candidly were ones who said, you know, we were trying to do the right thing. We were concerned about unit cohesion, but in fact there was no empirical evidence. There's never been any empirical evidence that openly gay service undermines unit cohesion. And so they made up that idea, and that's how they sold that package to the American public.
And of course, there's plenty of evidence to the contrary with all of the other armed services around the world where openly gay people are included and there isn't an issue. I wonder if
especially Britain and even over here.
Right. Are your ears pricked up about this news from the White House, this review of the policy announced by the White House now? Do you think there's any chance that President Obama will make the same mistakes that the Clinton administration made, or do you think that the review of the policy this time could be empirically based?
Well, I do think there's a risk that delaying too much, which is what Clinton did, could actually backfire. If you remember, Clinton set a 6-month timeout. It was a study period, which is Washington speak for delay and defeat. And during that time, Clinton said, we're going to study not whether we should lift the ban, but how to lift the ban. And still, what we ended up with was Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I am cautious about this. Of course there's going to be consultation. Of course Obama should speak with the military about it. But he should do it armed with the confidence that we now have the research showing that openly gay service just doesn't have any negative impact on the military. And in fact, the policy itself is what's causing us to lose soldiers and to force service members to lie to one another, and that's bad for unit cohesion.
There is actually data on this subject that would be helpful in sorting this out. This is supposed to be the age of science, they keep saying. Dr. Nathaniel Frank, Senior Research Fellow at the Palm Center, author of the new book, Unfriendly, How the Gay Ban Undermines the Military and Weakens America. Thank you for your research, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Rachel.